All right, to finish off this podcast, we do customarily talk about college football. Sorry, I had to take
Ooh,
a sip of.
pie.
Yeah. I have to. I'm gonna try to be as unbiased as possible as a Clemson fan, but I have to say to the
They
two
gonna put them
teams
boys
out
in.
there, Alabama, what it do? Penn State, what it do? Because they wanted to say those two teams were ahead of us, and boy, did I love that they did that. We'll get into it as we get down to the rankings, but I'm going to recap everything that happened in college football in the top six this weekend. All right, so we look at number one. They put Ohio State last week at number one, and they came out and they supported that. They won 73-14 over Maryland. Maryland is not that great of an opponent. I get that. I've heard tons of Clemson fans for some reason hating on Ohio State when they shouldn't be. When you play down opponents and you play opponents that aren't on your level, the only thing that you could do to prove that you are a great team is you blow them out. And boy, did they blow them out. I mean, 73-14 is crazy numbers. Justin Fields still in the Heisman race as he's continuing to put up numbers through the air, on the ground. J.K. Dobbins still producing on the ground. In this game, a significant storyline was that Chase Young was out. He's probably going to be suspended anywhere from 2 to 4 games for taking some money to bring his girlfriend out, which I completely disagree with the NCAA. But I mean, we all know that the NCAA is a dictatorship and that it completely needs to be amended. But we want to get into that. So Ohio State, no Chase Young, no problem. We kind of thought that going into the game because they are playing Maryland, but they definitely solidified their position as a top two team. LSU at number two faced the number three team in the country and beat Alabama 46-41. Joe Burrow might have just locked up the Heisman. I mean,
Yeah.
he might have just done that. Unless he collapses in the last 3 games, which he plays teams like, I believe he plays Texas A&M at the end of the season like they usually do. They play Arkansas, which Arkansas is a dumpster fire. They just fired their head coach. And they play one other team. It escapes me right now. I don't have the schedule in front of me. I'm sorry for that. Excuse me. But yeah, LSU completely came out and showed why they're one of the top two teams in the nation. I got them at number one, and we'll go into that later. I think that they showed me a lot with the win over Alabama. It was more dominant than people think. Alabama was playing catch up the entire game. And so I definitely think that Joe Burrow, as long as he doesn't collapse, he's the Heisman winner. Because he just comes in, game out, producing, putting up big numbers. I mean, he threw for over another 300 yards, almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns against Bama, and just looked like an absolute superstar, which I gotta admit, I never saw that coming. I thought that Joe Burrow was going to be the reason that LSU got held back this season, and it's completely shifted. I mean, he's the reason that they're winning now. And so I will happily admit that I was wrong about LSU. I thought they'd be good, not great this year coming into the season, but they have completely proved me wrong, and they continue to win football games. And then looking at it from the Alabama perspective, you still have a chance, Alabama fans, to make the playoffs. And I think there's an opportunity for that to happen. But the question is, should it happen? As football fans, should we be happy with letting Alabama in if it plays out that way? I don't
No,
think no. Exactly. No, we shouldn't be
but it's
because
gonna happen.
it I don't know.
Sadly,
We'll go over some scenarios of where that could happen, but I think that Alabama, I think they should be punished for the way that they play defense because they don't play any defense anymore. We've seen it against every single elite offense that they face now on that they can't play defense. They have busted coverages. They can't defend the run like they used to. So teams they still stop the run decently. They slow it down, but they still allow. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week ran for 103 yards. I mean, so
Yeah,
they're not great at stopping the run, but they can at least do that a little bit. But their pass defense, they just get torched by every single good opponent that they face. You look back at last year, Georgia in the SEC championship, they went and scored over 30 on that Alabama defense. Or maybe they didn't score 30, but they scored 28, so close to it. And Jake Fromm had a field day on that defense. They were still able to prevail, but it showed that their defense was starting to crumble. And then in the semifinal, they went up 28 to nothing, yes, but they eventually gave up 38 points. I think it was 38. And if it wasn't, it was close to that. And so that's completely unacceptable. And then we know what happened in the championship game. They give up 44 points. And then this week, giving up 46. That's abysmal. They are no longer able to play defense, and I think they should be punished for that, and they should not make the playoffs. And I think that every single college football fan should agree with that. Even Alabama fans, I think they should agree with that. They're not playing up to the Alabama standard. I mean, this will be a travesty if they make it in, because, I mean, it just shows maybe they are one of the better football teams, and maybe they are one of the top 4 teams. And when it comes, I mean, they're super talented on offense, but you can't. It was the same thing with Oklahoma, and why I didn't think that they should have made it into the college football playoff last year. You have to be able to play a semblance of defense. You have to be able to be balanced on both sides of the football. And I think you should be punished when you don't do one of those things great. And they don't play great defense. I mean, it's not on the level of Oklahoma last year. I mean, they're not 126 bad. They're not one of the worst defenses in the country, but they're still a below average defensive football team. And I just think you should have to play complimentary football if you want to get into the playoffs. That's just my view on it. And so to move on to number 4, Penn State. I'm sorry, 31-26 loss to Minnesota. I put it in caps, and I said it right as the game ended. As a Clemson fan, I'm going to be extremely biased about it. I told you, y'all are frauds. Y'all are completely fraudulent, huh?
Said they might lose next week too.
They play Ohio State next week on the 23rd. Yeah, that's right. And so I think, like I said, you're going to have to prove it to me if you want to prove that you're one of the top teams. And I think the committee was wrong for putting them in the top 4. But again, I'm thankful because it showed that y'all weren't ready for prime time. Y'all are a decent football team, but y'all are a year behind where you will be. I think next year that y'all can compete for a championship. But when it comes to this season, I just knew in the back of my head they're a good football team. But when it comes to late November, they're going to crumble because they're just not ready for primetime. They are a young football team. They will eventually grow into a team that can play in the big time games. But, I mean, y'all lost to a Minnesota team that was struggling at the beginning of the year against some of the FCS opponents. And y'all lost. I know they're undefeated, and I respect Minnesota for beating y'all, but you can't lose that game if you're a Penn State fan. I feel kind of sorry for you, but at the same time, as a Clemson fan, I was kind of mad that y'all were ahead of us, and so you lost, and it proves that y'all were fraudulent. Clemson at number 5 last week, they beat 55-10 NC State. They went over NC State 55-10. And I'm glad that they put us at number 5. And I wish they would do it again this week. I know they won't, but I wish they would again. Because they had our team playing like some killers, man. They came out and ran it up. 28-0 at the end of the first quarter against NC State. I mean, completely annihilated them. I just see that happening the rest of the season. They disrespected this football team. And Dabo, he's going to keep on playing that. He's going to keep on playing that card with this team. And the team will continue to improve off of that as they build that chip on their shoulder of being underrated by the committee in the first rankings. Even though they won't be underrated, I think, for the rest of the season by the rankings, and they'll be in the top 4 for the rest of the year. I still think that they're going to hold on to the fact that, hey, in the first rankings, y'all wanted to put us at 5. We'll remember that. And then looking at number 6 to round it out, Georgia gets a 27-0 win over Missouri. The Georgia defense is one of the best in the country, but I'm still not sold on this offense and the way that y'all receivers are playing. Lawrence Cager goes out with another injury, and y'all beat a Missouri team without Kelly Bryant 27-0. And so I don't think that's too impressive since Kelly Bryant was out. But as long as you continue to play defense and run the football, y'all might have a chance. Y'all might have a chance to go out and beat LSU in the SEC championship, because I do believe y'all have the SEC East locked up, as I don't think y'all will lose another game. But you do have a key game against Auburn, which could be a little bit tricky since it's on the road, but we'll see. And so the CFP top 6 is coming out tonight, and so I will give you my CFP top 6. I got LSU at number 1, moving up from number 2 last week. I thought they were number 1 last week, but the committee put them at 2. I believe that the committee will put them at number 1 this week, because I do believe when you have 4 top 10 wins, you look at the resume, that's crazy good. Crazy good resume. I don't think that the committee will be able to ignore it. And so I think they will move Ohio State down to number 2, even though Ohio State did nothing to get moved down. Y'all didn't lose, so it's not like, we got to move them down. No. It's just that LSU played one of the top teams in the nation and beat them and looked pretty dominant doing it. And so y'all are going to get moved down to number 2. I got Clemson at number 3. I do believe that Clemson will be at number 3 in the committee's top 6. I believe that Georgia will get moved up to 4, and that's how I think it should be. And so I think that they're going to move down Alabama to number 5. I do believe it'll be number 5, and that's who I have at number 5. I don't believe they should be in the playoffs at the end of the year, but for right now, when looking at the one-loss teams, I believe they're the second ranked one-loss team. I think they'll be behind Georgia, because Georgia does have 2 top 10 wins, or 2 top-tier wins. They're really top 15 wins, as Auburn is outside the top 10. But I do think Georgia will be ahead of them, and then Alabama will be at number 5 on the outside looking in. And then I got Oregon at number 6. I don't think that they're going to put Oregon at number 6. I believe they might jump Minnesota up to number 6, because they're going to give huge respect to Minnesota beating Penn State, which they did not give any respect to them last week. Minnesota was 17th. But I think they're going to take a huge jump up and maybe be at number 6. But in my top 6, I have Oregon at number 6, looking at from the outside, looking in. And honestly, looking at the scenarios, and you can jump back in on this, Hasan. I think Alabama might make the playoffs. But I do think in order for that to happen, I believe that they're going to have to blow out Auburn at the end of the year. So what will happen is, I think for them to make the playoffs, I think Georgia would need to win out and then lose to LSU in the championship game. And so they drop out from the number 4 spot. And then I think that Alabama would have to blow out Auburn so that they could say that Oregon, who would have been let's say that Oregon wins out. It could be Utah, but let's say it's Oregon for all intents and purposes. I messed up on that one, didn't I? But yeah, Oregon, let's say that they went out and go 12-1 and win the Pac-12 championship game over a top 10 Utah team. All right. For Alabama to say they are unequivocally better than Oregon and get in for that number 4 spot, I think they have to blow out Auburn, because Auburn is the one loss that Oregon had. Oregon led that game the entire way, and that was at the beginning of the year. And so I think that they'll look at that as a decent loss for Oregon, especially since they didn't have all their starting receivers. I mean, Micah Pittman was out. Jawan Johnson was out, and so I definitely think that Alabama, if they blow out Auburn, they will make the playoffs because I think Georgia will end up losing to LSU and they'll end up nabbing that 4 spot. Now, if they lose to Auburn, obviously they're out. But if they win a close game against Auburn and it's like a nip and tuck game and it looks like Alabama should have lost, I think they're out because they just don't have the resume to get into the CFP. They won't have a resume that's comparable to Oregon, and so you can't say that they're unequivocally better. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I just blanked out. I was looking at the stats. I'm sorry. Um, I believe Alabama is gonna get in. I keep you know what I'm saying. I keep saying that. Uh, I do believe. For some reason the list looks. See, you got LSU 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3. First three I agree with. You got Georgia 4. All right, Bama 5. You got Oregon at 6. I'm sitting here wondering where's Florida State at? Like, nah, like
Okay, you
I'm
need to
like
stop.
wondering.
Y'all,
All right,
y'all, y'all got to win against Boston. Y'all actually might make a bowl game because y'all beat Boston College this week. Y'all are 5-5, and you play. I
yo,
think
stop.
like I no, I'm not disrespecting you. I think that's good that y'all are gonna make a bowl game, especially since you've already fired Willie Taggart, which was the first move you needed to make to start the rebuild. So I think that y'all have like Alabama State next, and so y'all will probably beat them, and y'all make a bowl game because you'll have 6 wins then.
You trying to be funny? It's all
I'm
right.
not. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm honestly being so dead serious that that is an impressive thing for FSU with how the season has gone. It could have been easy for y'all to lose to Boston College and give up on the season. So I'm being dead serious. Congratulations, because
Uh,
I think that y'all are moving in the right direction by getting rid of Willie Taggart. That was the
we're
first
gonna be
step. As long as y'all had kept him, y'all would have been in the dumpster. Just saying.
okay. But yeah, honestly, I feel like we shouldn't sleep on Auburn. You think do you think Auburn can like sneak in if they beat Georgia and
Not
they
into the playoffs. No,
you don't think so?
not into the playoffs because they can't win the division. All right, they already lost to LSU, and so they wouldn't be able to sneak into the playoffs because they wouldn't
But
be able to win a championship game. They almost did it with 2 losses in 2017, but that was because they won the SEC West and they played into the SEC championship game, and then they lost in the SEC championship game. So if they were able to win their division, I might like be saying yes they could, but Auburn can't win their division, so I don't think it will happen, especially since they have 2 losses.
okay, okay, that's fair.
No, but I do think they could beat Georgia. I'm not saying that they couldn't beat these teams, but I just don't think they'll make the playoffs if they do that. But they could beat Georgia. They could and create chaos. I hope they beat Alabama because again I don't want to see, and call me biased, but I don't want to see Alabama in the playoffs. Just as a football fan, not even as a Clemson fan, I don't want to see them in the playoffs. I've seen them too many times in the playoffs. It's y'all's turn to take a
Y'all
seat
scared.
and watch from the couch
Y'all
and watch.
scared.
No,
Y'all, because
I think
it's the Alabama
no, no.
Invitational.
Well, I don't think we're scared. Not our team, but as a fan, me personally, I'm kind of scared of facing Bama because I just don't know. Not just because you never know. Because Alabama got bounced out in 2017 for a little while and then got back in, and then they came back angry. So. But I don't, I, I
No,
don't,
but
I don't think that's the case though, because I think that Alabama team was better than this 2019 team. Maybe not on offense, but from a defensive standpoint, they were because they came out and blitzed us when we had Kelly Bryant. I don't think they can do that this year because they just don't have the play at linebacker like they used to.
I yeah, okay, but I just feel they're gonna make it because Georgia is gonna either lose to Auburn or LSU, and all right, so Bama needs LSU to basically win
Win out.
out, right?
Yeah,
And they need Georgia to lose, so obviously they can jump them.
right.
And even if Oregon wins out, bro, I still don't believe that the committee is gonna put them in over Bama. I think they just have too much respect
But
for Bama. Like, that's the
and
sad thing.
that may be the case, but then they would be going against protocol because if they win only a close game against Auburn, Alabama, then you look at it and the resumes wouldn't match up because Oregon would have played a better schedule and had better wins against better opponents, and they would be a conference champion. And so I think that it would definitely they would be going against protocol if they did that because then for them to say that to look at those resumes if it ends up being like that, they would have to say that they think that Alabama is unequivocally better than Oregon. That's I keep on saying those two words because that's how it is in their like rule book. Their protocol is unequivocally better. And I just don't think that they could prove that they're unequivocally better. And I think they sent a statement by putting them at number 3 this past week, which was they know that Alabama is down on defense and that they're down on their schedule. And so I think that they will hold them out if that's how it plays out. Now, if they blow out Auburn, then they
Auburn needs to win
probably
out, right?
for what?
For Bama to have a quality win over Auburn. Because if they blow
Probably
Auburn
they would
out,
they would need
lose
Auburn to come
Auburn.
into that game with only 2 losses. They would
Yeah,
need them to come in as a 9-2 football team, and they would need to blow them out. Because
yeah,
then you
which
could
is
say,
very
hey, we
possible
went on the road, we beat what was then a 2-loss team, and that's a
in the
quality
last game
win.
of the season. Yeah.
Right, right. And so, but if Auburn loses to Georgia, especially if it's like in dominant fashion, which I don't think it will be, I think it will be a close game. But even if they just lose, their best win would be against a 4-loss team. A 4-loss team when the best win for Oregon would be in the Pac-12 championship game, and they would have beat a really good Utah team that was ranked in the top 10 with 1 loss. So, and you when you look at Oregon's 1 loss, you would look at it as they played in a game where they were winning the entire time, and then they just choked without some of their best receivers. So I think all Alabama that scenario has to play out for Alabama to make it in.
Yeah, so Oregon needs some. I mean, not Oregon. Frick. Oh yeah. Bama needs some help. I was like Auburn
Yeah,
and
Bama
Oregon.
needs it definitely needs some help.
Yeah, yeah, okay. But look at Oregon's recent games. They was close to a Washington team, Washington State.
Washington is difficult to play on the road. Now Washington State
Washington State.
that was a little bit of a nip and tuck game where it was but I mean they blew out USC on the road, and USC is not an amazing football team, but they
They
play
have
different at home. You look at USC, they beat Utah at home. They before that game they had lost all the losses that USC had were on the road, and USC had been playing great at home. And Oregon came into there down actually I think about 10-0 or 14-0, and then for the rest of the game they completely dominated. They completely shut the game down, and so I think that that Washington State game kind of gets eliminated by the USC win.
but looking at Oregon's wins, they beat Cal by 10 points.
Cal at the
Um
time was a difficult team to play. All right,
Stanford by
Cal has
15.
I mean that's a little bit iffy, but that was towards the beginning of the season. But Cal was difficult at the time. Now Cal has suffered some injuries since then, and so they're not looking too good record wise. But that's not a bad performance.
Okay.
So,
Well, yeah.
but we're gonna finish it off with that. And so, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and also click the notification bell so you never miss an upload or a stream.